guys, just wanted to have a bit of glove talk today and a little bit of UFC history talk as well. First thing up I want to show you is this pair of gloves, which is a pair of the first fighter issued gloves from the UFC to their fighters way back when they started. So initially when the UFC started, it was all bare knuckle, and then some people would wrap their hands, and there was a couple fighters like Tank Abbott that brought in a pair of MMA style gloves initially, but the UFC then issued some gloves, and these were actually the first gloves that they issued. So these are called Boxergenics gloves. They came in a number of different versions. So this is just one of the versions. Some of them had different colored logos on them. Some of them, the design was slightly different. The top of the fist here was a little bit shorter. The wrist was a bit longer, slightly shaped differently. You can see that's red back there. Some of them were blue. Some of them on the logo, I think, has something like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or Gracie Fighter written on it, and used to be able to actually order them, I think, through the Gracie magazine. They used to sell some of these. It's even got the old phone number on it. So I'm pretty sure you used to be able to call that number and order these gloves and probably some other gear. Anyway, these are really, really cool. So these are, I'm guessing these are 20 plus years old and in absolutely perfect condition. So I'm not going to put these on for you guys, unfortunately. I have worn a pair in the past, and I think they're pretty comfortable actually for what they are. They're kind of like big oversized socks for your hands, but I didn't hear that many UFC fighters actually like them. If you have a look, a little bit of a thumb guard where you can hook your thumb through there. They're very basic. Like I said, they're just sort of like socks for your fists, for your hands. Little wrist strap here. But these are in insane condition, so I'm going to keep them that way. What I will say to you guys is that because these were only fighter issued, the only way that you're going to get a pair of them is if you knew a fighter or had contact with a fighter that had some, and they were still in good enough condition to move on. And I've actually got a pair that were fighter issued aside from these that I'm willing to move on. If anyone's interested, you just let me know. I get messages from time to time of people looking for pairs of gloves, and I'm happy to help you. So if you need a pair of Boxergenics gloves, give me a shout. This next pair is awesome, and I think I've mentioned it in one of my previous videos, but I'm going to show you again. This is a pair of gloves that was worn by Nick Diaz in his fight against Robbie Lawler at UFC 47. So 47, I don't even know what year that was, but that was probably like 2004, 2005, early UFC. One of Nick Diaz's first UFC fights. I think he fought a couple other guys first, and then he ended up fighting Robbie Lawler. Now, if you haven't seen that fight, stop this video and go and watch it. The UFC often put that up for free on YouTube and Facebook. Or if you've got Fight Pass, check it out. I'm sure you can YouTube it. But this is one of the most fun fights in the UFC history, in my opinion. Two young, hungry guys. Robbie Lawler, known for his power and his hands. Nick Diaz at the time was sort of known as a jiu-jitsu guy with pretty good boxing, and Nick said he was going to come in there and go toe-to-toe with Robbie Lawler, and he did, and the rest is history. He stocked and slapped Robbie around, took a lot of good shots from Robbie, and ultimately he knocked Robbie out cold. And this, you see there his old school Nick Diaz signature. And these gloves are really cool. This is similar in that these gloves were only ever issued to fighters as well. These were never available to the public. So you can see here there's a company name, might be hard to read, but it says Alano. They still make and manufacture gloves, and they actually made about 5 different versions of these gloves for the UFC. They had the UFC contract for a number of years. This is, I think, version 2 out of the 5. Here's another one that I've got. This is, I think it's a version 1. The difference is just a logo down here. And some of them are different. Some of them have a different logo here. Some of them, Owano is in white, and some of them actually state UFC on the fist there. Really cool gloves. And while I got this one, I'll chuck it on for you, because I know you guys like to see that. And again, what I was going to say is really, really hard to come by. Again, they were only fighter issued. So unless you've got a contact, you're probably not going to find a pair. And from time to time, people do ask me, do I know where to get them? And I've actually got a couple pairs of these if anyone's interested. So get in contact with me and I'll definitely hook you up. Obviously, if you're in Australia, that's ideal, but if you're not, it's not the end of the world. We can work it out. Just making sure I'm getting these on right. I actually really like the feel of these gloves. They're not complicated. There's not a lot to them. Now there's obviously going to need to be a bit of breaking in going on the fist here, because that's all pretty solid right now. I think a little bit of wearing in and you do okay. It does make it a half decent fist shape. Definitely doesn't compare to like a Pride glove or one of the new Bellator gloves that comes basically pre-fist shaped. This one you've sort of got to do the work on, but otherwise it's pretty comfortable. There's not a lot to it. It's pretty basic. It looks good, feels good. You know, getting hit by this would hurt. There's not a lot of padding going on there, but it's a really cool overall glove. So if you're a big fan of those early days of the UFC, when they sort of started hitting the mainstream, Chuck Liddell, you know, Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, Mirko Cro Cop, Wanderlei Silva, Rampage Jackson. If you're a fan of those guys and you wanted some memorabilia, get hold of some of these gloves and get them signed by those guys. These are something special. These were issued to the fighters and pretty easy to get signatures on them at this point. And they would just make really good pieces if you were to get them framed or put them somewhere in your man cave. Awesome gloves, guys. Love them. Happy to share these with you all. Just wanted to show these off today. If you've got any questions, have any queries, anything you want to see, you guys just let me know. Thanks very much. Take it easy.